Scott with Leading Edge Archery. Hey, I got a good friend of mine, customer here, Jesse Jones, and his wife works for us, which is awesome. And wanted to have a talk today about elk hunting and kind of what we did. Recap our hunts. I just got back 2 days ago. You got back
Monday.
So yeah, you and I were gone. And I was gone for almost 31 days. And you
17. I was gone for
17 days. So we both spent a heck of a lot of time in the woods. And we wanted to talk about kind of like what our experience was. We both didn't kill one. It sucks. Not for a lack of opportunity. I think we both had some opportunities.
Not for a lack of effort either.
There you go, yeah. And put on a ton of miles, and we kind of wanted to recap. I got a chance to hunt some private land that really is in one of the greatest areas, I think, in the country for elk hunting. And Jesse actually got public land.
I went public land. It's real hard unit, 5% success rate, but it was a lot of fun. I mean, yeah. Took me 10 days to get into them, but finally got into them.
Yeah, and so we want to kind of recap this so you, the hunters, can look at, listen to us, the trials and tribulations we go through. You're probably going to relate to a lot of it and maybe learn some things that'll help you on your next hunt come next year, because, it's crazy to say this, but I just got out of the mountains and I'm ready to go.
I'm ready to go back.
Ready to go back. Exactly.
I just need a couple good days of sleep and then you're ready to go again.
Exactly, no doubt. So once again, I'll talk about mine real quick. I actually went with two other guys and got a chance to hunt 1,100 acres in between the Tercio Ranch, the Vermejo Ranch, which is in New Mexico, and the Bobby Hill Ranch. And it's really three of the best elk ranches you can ask to hunt on. And it was amazing, but I found out how small 1,100 acres can hunt. I was hunting two little areas that probably was less than 100 acres apiece, and seen some world-class bulls pretty much all week. I mean, we were looking at bulls. We seen one definitely close to 400 inches and 8 others that were over 330. And these were satellite bulls, believe it or not. Technically, probably the toughest hunt that I've ever done, and I've been doing this for a long time. Wind was always a factor. I mean, that wind, the thermals are they screwed us so bad because we're hunting south in the mornings, the thermals are running downhill. We kind of wait till they switch to really get on them, and then by that time, they're thinking about going to bed, and it sucks. And then the nighttime hunts, we were good on nighttime because we can hunt that same area with thermals running up mountain, which was awesome, but we have until about 30 minutes before dark. And then as soon as that wind thermal starts to change, you're done. So we really couldn't hunt that twilight of the evening, which I think is the best.
Oh, I agree 100%.
Yeah.
So when I got up there, obviously I spent 10 days. I found some fresh sign on one side of the mountain. Followed I walked 14 miles all the way around the other side. Didn't find anything. I figured they'd be bedding over there. And finally I'd already put in 100 miles, so I went and took a break, took my wife into Creed, where my family's from, and went in there and had a good time. Then I helped my brother hunt 76, called a couple, well, I tried to call in a couple bulls for him. There was a smaller raghorn that came in that he didn't want to come play, but so eventually, I was like Tuesday or Wednesday, it was like day 11 or 12, or I went in there back to my unit, and I was like, well, if they're not on this side of the mountain, they got to be on the other side, which didn't make any sense. It was a west facing slope. I didn't think they'd be over there.
Right.
Well, as soon as I got in there, I opened the door, and there's freaking bugles 200 yards off the road, and I'm like, son of a bitch, they're here. I don't know if I can cuss on here. I apologize.
It's okay.
But anyway, so I'm sitting there waiting for the thermals to switch, and they finally switched, which this area that I hunted was super strange. In the morning, the wind, the thermals, they'd go up. Even in the evening, they'd go up, but they'd go up and to me a little bit, so they blow north and east.
Wow.
Which was super strange. So I got in this first night, and I was walking in on this old logging road, and I looked to my right, and there's 5 or 6 cows, and they're sitting there, and I'm not against shooting a cow, by no means.
Right.
So this cow was bedded at 80, and I was sitting there, and there's a bull bugling 100 yards away from him. So I'm sitting there, and I'm like, all right, I take off my shoes. As I'm taking off my shoes, the cow peeks over, and she's looking at me. And I'm just froze there for like 5 minutes. My neck's kinked real bad. I'm sitting there. Finally, she looks away. I take my shoes off, and I sneak up to probably right about 70. And I'm sitting there, and she's bedded, and she has a pine tree right in front of her. So I'm like, oh man, so waiting and waiting, and all of a sudden you just feel that wind.
Yep.
And
oh yeah.
They all walk off, and I'm like, well, they kind of trot off, and I'm like, well, I'm gonna tell that bull I'm gonna come steal his cows. So I sit there and I bugle at him, and he just comes running, screaming, breaking branches, and he runs up to about 100 yards. So I close the distance another 30, and he starts raking. I start raking. He bugles. I cover his bugle, and then he runs to 50, and he's sitting there, and he needs to come another 5 yards or so, and I can just smoke him. Well, he comes another 5 yards, and there goes that wind again, just hits him, and he takes off.
The wind killed us this year. It did. It was really tough for us too. The same scenarios. We, in basically 23 days of hunting that ranch, we only got 4 really good, legitimate opportunities, and those are tough odds. I mean, I don't care where you're at. And we're in the bulls. We're in the elk. The elk are there. Our toughest problem was calling them across the fence. You know, I'm not going to lie. We were looking at a lot of these bulls on the Vermejo Ranch, and you guys do your homework and look at that ranch. That's 20+ thousand to hunt there, and it's the land of the giants. And
this where Cameron Haynes is?
Yeah, Cameron Haynes hunts it. I think Lee Lakosky, all those guys. And, you know, trying to call them bulls over the fence, and I always equate it to, you know, a guy walks into a bar and he's got 20 really good-looking women in there, and your buddy comes in and says, hey, there's one hottie in the parking lot. You're not going out there to look at the one hottie. And I'm trying to be the one hottie. And it made it extremely tough. And, you know, and the other thing that we found is that every day was changing. And I don't know if you experienced the same thing, but one day the bulls really wanted to cow call. That's all they wanted. I'd bugle, shut them down. They'd just get quiet on me. And then some days it was all about fighting. They wanted the bugle. They wanted the aggressive calling. They wanted the raking of the trees. And if I cow called, they'd non-responsive. So it was really weird. I think we were watching all the different stages of the rut happen. The elk rut.
Day by day.
Yeah, I don't know if you've seen the same thing. Or...
See, everybody, there was so many hunters in the area I was at. I mean, people would get a mile or two off the road. Nobody was going steep, so I just started going steep. So the first day I got into them, I had all that bugle in action. That was good, but I went back. I found out where they're bedding, so I went to their bedding area early in the morning, and there was a bull, and there was two bulls. There was a big, I'll tell the story in a minute, but I missed a big 6x7, and there was him and a big 5x5. I mean, just Coke can antlers, just stud. And those two pretty much were chasing cows, chasing each other off and everything. But so I had that 5x5, and he wasn't, I think it was like 97 yards, but he was just kind of in the trees. And I cow called at him, and then the whole herd, they just did not like that cow call. They just took off.
Darn.
So I was sitting there.
That's pressured animals.
They did not like the cow call. So I figured out over a span of 3 days and shortened it up. They did not like the cow call. They did not like a bugle tube. And they did not like a calf call. So the only thing I would do is I just grab my reed and I'd get my hand and I'd turn
backwards. You don't mind, demonstrate that what you were doing. So he's just taking a reed and using his hands, folks. And this is a big deal.
I would just turn backwards and just a real wimpy kind of, you know, come whip my ass. I'm small, but I'm pissed off, you know, come get me.
That's a raghorn bull.
Yeah, so that's what my tactic was pretty much the whole time. I'd sit there and just bugle small, and I'd get more intimidating, depending how the bull answered me.
Right.
So if he started scraping, I'd cover his scrape, and then if he started bugling, I'd bugle over his bugle. I'd chuckle over his chuckle, which I would use my bugle tube to chuckle, just because you sound
better.
Way more intimidating.
Absolutely.
But I did miss a bull at 50 yards, so I came across the herd. There was that big 5x5 that ended up stealing the herd bull's 6x7's cows, and he ran by, and I was like, man, that 6x7, he's going to cross right where the whole herd did. So I set up, and it was pretty open. There was one little bitty tree I set up in the shade, and before I could even get my rangefinder out, he was already coming. So I ranged one bush at 30, where I thought I could stop him, and I ranged the tree line at 60, just in case he made it all the way over there. Well, he came back, and I hit him with a grunt, and he stopped, and he did not look 10 yards past 30. So I put the 40-pin center mass and pulled. I mean, I go anchor, nose, peep, sight, level, and I let it go, and right underneath him. I mean, I was cool, calm, collected.
So, but as a guy, I take a lot of guys elk hunting the first timers, especially, and I always tell them, if you get stuck in that situation where you've got to kind of use your head and go, I think that bull's 40, add 10. Every single time, I tell every hunter that if you look at the bull and your brain's telling you 20 or telling you 30, add 10, make that 30, make that 40. It'll increase your odds tremendously.
100%.
I've seen most guys that I've taken hunting, they've missed low. Because you can't imagine, unless you're a really seasoned elk hunter, how big these animals are. They are huge.
Oh, looking at a whitetail, I mean, whitetail I thought it was 40 all day, but after I ranged him, he ended up being 53, which obviously I shot 13, right underneath him, 13 yards, that's a foot. So it was a tough experience. That was a tough one.
It's man. Tough.
At that point, I'd already walked.
How big was that bull?
6x7. He went 310 easy.
Public land is a giant.
Public land. He's a stud, especially for this unit. My father he hunted this unit growing up, and I really wanted to kill a bull in this unit because that's where my dad killed his first bull.
Right.
So I wanted my first bull to be in the same unit.
Right.
But I mean, I've killed cows and stuff, but other than that,
it's tough. It was tough out there, and we had similar situations running. I actually called in 2 bulls for one of my guys that I hunted with, one at 14 yards and one at 18 yards. And you imagine an animal that weighs 800 to 1,000 pounds, and at 14 yards, you can't get a shot. It's unbelievable on how uncanny it is that these elk can pick that one lone tree or that lone bush and come at you right behind it. It's like they almost know you're there.
Oh,
And it happens a lot in elk hunting. I mean, it's what makes the sport so darn tough. Because the animals are huge. I mean, they really are.
So the first 10 days I had my wife, and then one of my buddies went with me. My wife had to come back. She had to come back to work and school. And my other buddy, he pussed out. He didn't want to. He didn't
want to stay.
He was hurting. He didn't
work too hard.
Told me it was too steep.
Yeah, there you go.
But anyway, so I'm by myself calling in solo, and it's always really hard because I'll run way back, and I'll call, and I'll try to run up and cut the distance. But with it being late in the season and super dry, it's just so hard not to make any noise.
Yeah.
So I did call a bull into 8 yards. It was me and him, and I was on the way back to the truck. I'd already given up, and I was kind of maybe half a mile from the truck. And I was like, you know, I'll let out one more little bugle, and I let it out, and then he answered right back. So I was sitting there and looking at my thermals, and the wind was in my face. It was great.
Perfect set.
So I just started working my way to him, you know, getting a little more aggressive. He'd start raking. I'd chuckle at him because he'd chuckle at me. I'd start raking at him. And finally I got to a spot where there's a logging clearing. It wasn't a road. It's just kind of where they cleared. And I set up in those 3 little pine trees. So I set up directly in the middle because he was coming. Right, I could see him. He was 30 yards, working his way down to me. And I'm sitting there trying to bugle behind me and make it sound like I'm farther back. And he works his way in, and I'm at full draw, and he's sitting there raking the bush right in front of me. And I'm sitting there at full draw for 2 minutes, and then the wind shifts, and he's gone.
And so a couple of things, folks, you heard him talk about in there. Number one, if you're calling by yourself, you got to call and move. I think the biggest mistake guys make when they're hunting solo is they'll call and stay there. And you guys don't realize something. I tell you, and I've had this happen to me, elk that are 500, 600, 800 yards away, and you call from a certain area, they know within about 50 to 100 yards,
they can pinpoint
you exactly where you're sitting, come to you and look at you. So it's real important, you know, Jesse, seasoned elk hunter, call, move, get out of that area. But that bull is going to target that last spot that you called from, and that's where he's going to see.
Come scent check it, and
without a doubt. And the other thing you heard him talk about too is drawing early. You got to get that bow drawn early. You're not going to have time when he's on top of you. He's going to bust you moving. They got eyes like a turkey, and it's one of the things that we got busted with quite a few times with some new hunters, not getting set and ready early enough because these animals cover so much ground so darn fast.
Oh, they're so fast.
Oh, it's unbelievable.
So that's one thing that I need to practice on more because I held it 2 minutes, and I mean I could probably went 1 more minute, but I was sitting there and I was
shaking
already
like crazy.
So next season when we go into it, I'm going to spend every other day just holding it 2 minutes and then seeing how that arrow flies at 20.
You know, and that goes to also looking at the bows that are out there. You got to really pick a bow that's got a great back wall that you can hold as long as possible. You know, as someone who takes a lot of hunters and guides a lot of hunters, the number one reason they can't hold long enough. I mean, and it's frustrating sometimes because it's not like hunting a whitetail where you're in a blind or you're in a tree stand and they don't know you're there. These elk are coming in knowing where you're at, knowing the location. They're looking for something specific. And being able to hold is a key for sure. We ran into a lot of the similar situations, and I wanted to talk about them. I mean, we were blessed to hunt a great ranch. We, like I said, 4 opportunities. We probably should have killed at least 1 to 2 bulls for sure. But, you know, it was just a very, very tough hunt from a technical standpoint. I am sitting in one spot trying to call these animals over to me and jump a fence. I said it 100 times. If I had a way, and you heard Jesse say it a second ago, to close that distance, if I could have closed 100 yards, 200 yards, and really get in their grill, I call it, and really challenge them, these bulls would have come in and wanted to fight. I mean, there's no doubt. And I think we would have tagged out in literally 5 days. I mean, and not being able to do that makes it crazy tough. So these are the things you got to look at as an elk hunter. You know, make sure and check your property. Make sure and check what the layout of the land looks like. What's holding the elk? What's not holding the elk? And be prepared for those. You know, honestly, I got enamored into this whole entire, you know, Tercio Ranch, Vermejo Ranch, Bobby Hill Ranch, and being in the middle of it, and really didn't think that, you know, these guys manage these properties all year for elk. They're feeding them, they're grooming the property, they got the water, they got everything. So their resident populations, how and why am I going to get them in this 1,100 acres that really a guy owns it for a summer home property? You know, it's not really an elk hunting property like the others.
That's a hard task.
It's crazy hard. We found it to be extremely hard. So as awesome as it sounded, it was also extremely tough because of that reason. It was one of the toughest hunts that I've been on because when you're around them, you see them and you hear them every day, every sit, and you can't get a shot. It sucks. It really started to wear on my head, my brain. I started to get, you know, that mountain fatigue you know, where I was just starting to get brain fog and getting depressed, and, you know, I had to really keep myself upbeat. And I think we're getting just enough encounters to try to get you going back the next day.
It's kind of what's hard for being solo for me, just going out there and just keeping your mind.
Yes.
So I'd go out one evening, I had good encounters. I mean, I heard 80 bugles one evening. The next day, I didn't hear anything until after dark. I heard a couple bugles, and then so what I would do is get up early in the morning and I'd go road bugle. And I only had luck one time with the road bugle, and I chased it and it led to dead end. I mean,
dead end, yeah.
Once that cow was hot and those bulls were chasing, I mean, I could figure out where they're bedded in the morning. But after that, I don't know where they went. I could see them run for miles.
So another thing Jesse just said, and I want you to make sure and keep in mind too, is that he's on public land, pressured, a lot of people, right?
A lot of people.
He went higher and harder than everyone else, and that is the key. You got to understand, most of the guys elk hunting out there are hunting the Forest Service trail roads, the logging roads, and they're not moving much off of them. They're going to walk through those suckers and walk them for miles. The elk aren't there. You got to get higher, hunt harder, and get in those obscure places that no one else is going to.
Yeah, they may bed there at night, but in the morning they'd wake up, and I mean, we're literally where I hunted, there was a rock slide around the entire mountain, and the only reason I saw them is because I could see the elk climbing the rock slide from half a mile away. And I'm like,
to get to their bedding area.
That's where their bedding was, up top. They had a little spring up there. They had everything they needed. Those big parks, park after park. So that's where I had to go, and it was 4 miles from the truck, and like I said, I averaged a little over 10 a day, close to right under 170 miles for the whole.
Yeah, we did. We figured that we did about 200 miles in 23 days. So it was a tough year, but great experiences. We had a great time.
I wouldn't change
you wouldn't trade it for nothing.
No,
I'm the same way. I mean, unfortunately, you got to hunt by yourself. That sucked.
Yeah, I mean, I love hunting by myself. It's just,
but it's better with camp.
It'd be better to come back and talk to somebody and stuff like that. And I went to stay with my brother a couple nights in town, which was great. I got to go eat some good food and stuff like that. But regardless, I still lost almost 15 pounds.
Yeah, I think I lost like 8. So you can't go up there and not lose weight. But anyways, we just wanted to recap that, share with you all kind of our experiences. Make sure and tune back in. Hopefully next year we're going to be doing a lot of this before elk season. I know it's kind of weird afterwards, but man, if you don't get a chance to do it, get out in the mountains, get out there and elk hunt. Do it soon, because if you wait, you're going to be 55, 65 years old, have all the money in the world, no time, and not be able to physically do it unless you keep in great shape. So,
and don't be scared to go far and go hard. You can rest later at the end of September.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly. Because we're already dying to go back.
I'm ready
right now.
We're ready. I'm ready to go.
Exactly. So, other than that, we thanks for watching. Keep in tune with us and let us know what you think. And until next time, take care.
Have a good one.